Hey Chaos crew, Jimmy Chaos back with the multicolor cards of Streets of New Capenna. This is the last batch of cards we're going to look at for our set review, and there is a lot of them, so let's just get right into it. Alright, so up first is the Avon Heart Stabber. It's a blue and a black for a bird assassin. It's a rare, it's a 1/1 flyer, and as long as there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, Avon Heart Stabber gets +2/+2 and has Death Touch. When Avon Heart Stabber dies, mill 2 cards and then draw a card. Okay, so a 2 mana 1/1 isn't amazing, but it is fairly reasonable to get the 5 different mana values in your graveyards, and this becomes a 3 mana, not 3 mana, a 3 power and toughness Death Touch flyer, which is just great for 2 mana. As well as when it does die, it does draw you a card. So in limited, this is definitely a very strong card. And you would definitely play probably every copy of this you pull, but it is a rare, so you're not likely going to see a lot of them. But when you do, it's going to do some very powerful things, especially once it's a 3/3 and has Death Touch. And if your opponent does manage to kill it, it replaces itself with a new card. In terms of constructed, it probably doesn't do too much that constructed with C play for this, so I think it's more just a very strong limited card, and outside of that, probably not going to see a lot of play. Black Market Tycoon, a green and a red for a cat rogue. It's a rare, it's a 2/2. At the beginning of your upkeep, Black Market Tycoon deals 2 damage to you for each treasure you control. You can tap it to create a treasure. Okay, so yeah, that's quite a powerful downside. You really don't want to take damage for all your treasures, so this encourages you to use them right away. So if you don't have any kind of really good treasure payoff, this is going to be very difficult to make work, and it may just end up costing you the game, especially because it makes tokens, which then it will damage you for. So in limited, in the right deck, if you have a lot of treasure payoffs or just you're going to use your treasures consistently, this is not too bad. Otherwise, you want to be careful just to make sure you're not sacrificing treasures just for the sake of avoiding the damage from this. It kind of defeats the purpose of having the treasures in the first place or having this card in your deck at all. So I think this is going to be kind of tricky to make work in a limited deck. And in terms of constructed, yeah, this again seems a little shaky. I really don't know why you would want this in your deck just to make treasure tokens that you basically have to use right away. It seems a little strange. Yeah, not a big fan of this card overall for really any formats. All right, next. Body Dropper, a black and a red for a Devil Warrior 2/2. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on Body Dropper. And for a black and a red and sacrifice another creature, Body Dropper gains menace until end of turn. So this is pretty cool with the Blitz mechanic being in black and red. You end up sacrificing those creatures with it, which then makes the Body Dropper bigger. It's a 2/2 for 2, so it's on rate. So if you're in either Riveteers or Maestros, this card is definitely a solid play. It's going to get bigger pretty easily, especially if you have some Blitz. And even if you don't, it's still a 2 mana 2/2 that can gain menace. And then if you do give it the menace, by sacrificing another creature, it becomes a 3/3 or a 4/4. So overall, yes, it's a very, very good card. Solid playable in any deck that's running black and red. All right, Brazen Upstart. So this is a red, a green, and a white, which is the Cabarets, and it's an Elf Shaman 4/2. It has Vigilance. And when Brazen Upstart dies, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Okay, so this is nice that it replaces itself. 3 mana for a 4/2 with Vigilance is pretty good rate. And yeah, then it just replaces itself. So yeah, this is, if you're in the, what are they again? Cabaret colors in a limited deck, this is definitely a solid playable card. Outside of limited, I wouldn't say this is probably to see much play unless a Cabaret color, or Naya as it's also known as, elf deck becomes a thing in EDH since there's now commanders for it. But overall, I don't think this will see any kind of standard play. But again, just a solid playable card and limited. Broker's Ascendancy. All right, so this is the first of the Ascendancy cycles we've seen. And this is the Broker's family. And it's green, a white, and a blue for an enchantment rare. Beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control and a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control. All right, so this comes down in turn 3. You might have a 2-drop out. If not, the following turn when you play a 4-drop, it's going to become a little bit bigger. And if you do have a planeswalker, it's going to gain loyalty. So the fact that this happens without you having to do anything to trigger it, it just happens every end step. Your creatures that are still alive get a little bit bigger. Any planeswalkers get a little bit more loyal. Overall, I'd say this is definitely in Limited a very solid card for the Brokers guild or family. And this might see some form of constructed play. I would think it would be more for EDH players. If you're in those colors, there's no reason not to play this card. It's just recurring value. So overall, this is a very good card. All right, the first of the charm cycle. This is the Broker's Charm. So it's a green, a white, and a blue. It's an instant. And you choose one. Target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Destroy target enchantment or draw 2 cards. So this is either interaction that helps us remove a creature, destroy an enchantment, or card advantage. So it's nice and flexible. Definitely, if you're in a Broker's colored deck in Limited, you would want as many of these charms as you could possibly play because they just do so many different things. It's going to help you in every stage of the game. In terms of constructed, again, EDH players who are in any Bant colors will want this charm. It just helps them draw cards or remove enchantments, which in EDH is a lot more powerful. So overall, a very, very strong and playable charm here. All right, now we have the Cabaret Ascendancy. This is a red, a green, and a white for an enchantment that is rare. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature or planeswalker card, you may reveal it and put it in your hand. If you don't put it in your hand, you may put it on the bottom of your library. Okay, so it's kind of like a scry that somewhat leads into a draw if it happens to be a creature or a planeswalker. So overall, this is a very interesting card. In Limited, you would definitely like to play this because if you look at the top and it's, say, a land, you can put it at the bottom, get it out of your way. If it's an instant or a sorcery that you still want, you don't have to put it on the bottom, so you can still draw it for your turn. And if it's a creature or planeswalker, you're basically drawing an extra card for the turn. So this is great card advantage. And again, this is another card that Commander players who are in these colors are going to like to have in their deck as well. So I could see this being played there. In terms of Standard, there's no real Naya deck in Standard as of right now. But if there becomes one, this could be a piece in it. But we'll have to see. Currently, I don't think there's a place for this in Standard, though. All right, we have the Cabaret Charm. It's a red, a green, and a white for an instant. Choose one. Cabaret Charm deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature or planeswalker. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. Or create 2 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. All right, this charm is not quite as good as the Broker's Charm we saw earlier. Dealing damage equal to the number of creatures you control requires you to control a good number of creatures for this to really do much. And if you're behind, and which is when you'd really need this to catch up, you're not going to deal enough damage to really achieve that. So it kind of doesn't really work that well in that regard. Making 2 tokens is okay for 3 mana. It is instant speed, but it's not great. They're just 1/1s. And creatures getting +1/+1 and trample is usually just not very strong. So this is kind of a miss in terms of the charm cycle. Not overly impressed with it. I don't think you're going to see you could play it in Limited, but I don't think you're really going to be super excited because most of the time it's going to just kind of do stuff. Not really any impactful stuff, but it's okay. It's probably about average, I would say. Celestial Regulator. 1, a white, and a blue for an Angel Advisor, 2/3 with flying. When Celestial Regulator enters the battlefield, choose target creature you don't control and tap it. If you control a creature with a counter on it, that chosen creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Okay, so if you don't have a creature with a counter, it comes down as a 2/3. It taps something and lets you get in for an attack, perhaps. A 2/3 flyer is not bad, especially for 3 mana. So this is okay. It's kind of average at that point. Now, if you have the creature with the counter, it keeps that creature tapped for an extra bit of time, an extra turn, basically. At that point, this goes a little bit above average, I would say, but encounters are pretty easy to get, so I don't think there's going to be problems with that as long as you're in a counter style, counters matters deck. It'll be very easy to trigger that. And then at that point, yeah, it's slightly above average, I would say, overall. Ceremonial Groundbreaker, 1, a green, and a white for an equipment. Equipped creature has +2/+1 and has trample. Equipped to a citizen for 1 or equipped for 3. Okay, so +2 and +1 isn't great, and trample is okay. Being cheap to equip to a citizen seems like it's really not going to be that relevant. It's a 2-color enchantment. Overall, yeah, this doesn't seem impactful enough. It's quite an investment a lot of the time just to get the effect. It'd be 6 mana to play this and equip it to a non-citizen. So overall, I'd say this is below average. It doesn't seem like a great card to play. Civil Servant, a white and a green for a cat citizen, 2/3. Okay, so we're already above rate there. So whenever Civil Servant attacks, you may tap another untapped citizen you control. If you do, Civil Servant gets +1/+0 and lifelink until end of turn. Okay, so if you have like one of the 1/1 white and green citizen tokens kicking around, this becomes a 3/3 with lifelink for 2 mana. Yeah, this is very solid if you're in the white-green strategy, which they do have enough citizens that you will consistently be able to trigger this ability. The lifelink is definitely going to be relevant. Gaining life unlimited is always a very strong thing to do. And the 3 mana 2/2 is well above rate. So overall, yeah, this seems like a solid playable. All right, we have Carmella, Glamour Thief. For 1, a blue, a black, and a red. A legendary vampire rogue. It's a 2/4. Has haste. You can pay 1 and tap it to add blue, black, and red mana. Spend this mana only to cast instants and sorceries. When Carmella Glamour Thief dies, return up to 1 instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, so the problem with this is it's 4 mana for a 2/4, which is really kind of below rate, especially even with the haste. The haste is more there so you can use it to add the mana to cast spells right away. So you kind of get a refund on this a little bit, but instants and sorceries, like you play this and you get a removal spell off the mana, let's say get a Maestro's Charm, which is probably the best payoff in terms of instants or sorceries. I guess it's okay. It just seems like it's not doing quite enough. And then when it dies, you get a spell back. That part kind of makes the card maybe worth it at that point. If you have enough instants and sorceries that you're reliably going to have one in your graveyard before this dies. So overall, I'd say in the right deck, this could be slightly above average. But in most decks, it's probably just going to be an average card that when it dies, it returns an instant or sorcery. The mana fixing, it's a little bit of ramp there. You probably aren't going to need in the end, or maybe not even get a chance really to use in some decks. So average to slightly above average depending on the build of the deck, if it has enough instants and sorceries for this to really interact with. All right, Corpse Appraiser. A blue, a black, and a red for a vampire rogue 3/3. When Corpse Appraiser enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target creature card from a graveyard. If a card is put into exile this way, look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put 1 of those into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Okay, so a 3 mana 3/3 that when it comes into play, it gives you the opportunity to remove something from their graveyard, so they could have something in there that can come back, something that's got an effect in the graveyard that you just want to get rid of to prevent them from doing that. And then if you do that, you get a little bit of card selection and card filtering and a card draw. You get to look at the top 3, take the best one, the rest go in the graveyard. Maybe you have some cards that you want in the graveyard, so it kind of helps set you up. So overall, I'd say this is probably say this is about an average playable card in the Maestro's colors. Corpse Explosion. 1, a black, and a red for a sorcery. It's rare. As an additional cost to cast a spell, exile a creature card from your graveyard. Corpse Explosion deals damage equal to the exiled card's power to each creature and each planeswalker. Yeah, this card is very strong. You're going to be able to wipe the board most of the time if need be with it. It's most creatures in this format. There's not a lot that have more than 5 toughness, so if you have a 5 power creature in the graveyard, you're set. And the planeswalkers in this set as well, that would probably deal enough damage to at least keep them under control, if not outright kill them. So yeah, this is very strong and limited. I think this could even see play in constructed, in any kind of Rakdos deck, maybe in historic with like a Croxa deck, and then you could do 6 damage to the whole board if need be. It would be definitely something that commander players are going to like. So we're going to see this, definitely see some constructed play, and in limited, yeah, it's an absolute bomb that just helps reset the board when you need to. A crew captain for a black, a red, and a green for human warrior 4/2 with haste. Captain crew has indestructible as long as it enters the battlefield this turn. Yeah, okay, so 3 mana, it comes down, it hits for 4, and then the following turn it probably dies. Yeah, this just, it doesn't do enough, it seems. Like, getting in for 4 damage, like, you might get a chump block, you might just get in for 4. That for 3 specific colors of mana can be a little bit tricky if you happen to go like red, red, black mana, and then on turn 4 you finally have green, then you're playing this, so on turn 4 you're a little bit behind the curve. So overall, I think this is kind of mediocre. I don't think it's great. I don't think I'd be super excited to play it, and again, it's going to get in for 1 attack, and then it's going to die from there pretty easily with the 2 toughness. So overall, kind of mediocre. Darling of the Masses, 2, a green, and a white for an elf citizen. 2/4. Other citizens you control get +1/+0. Whenever Darling of the Masses attacks, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. Wow, okay, so if you're in white-green citizens, this is a payoff big time here. There's lots of ways to make the tokens, which all become 2/1 tokens, and every time this attacks, it makes another token, and for toughness, it's going to survive a lot of those attacks, so it's going to be able to swing for a couple of turns without really losing it. And once you're at the point where attacking you would lose it, you just sit back, and now you have a couple extra tokens that are 2/1s that are help you stave off your opponent's attack until you're in a position where this can start swinging again and get you even more tokens. So overall, yeah, this seems very strong if you're in a citizen-based deck, and I look forward to trying this one out for sure. And that's some pretty cool artwork. I like the cat; she's red. Disciplined Duelist, a green, a white, and a blue for a human citizen, 2/1 with double strike. Disciplined Duelist enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. Okay, yeah, so the fact he has double strike really makes that shield counter go an extra mile, because it comes in, it swings for 2. If it kills whatever's blocking it, it maintains its shield counter. If not, then yeah, it'll take some damage and lose the shield counter and have dealt 4 damage to itself and stick around. And then again, if it attacks the following turn again, it'll be swinging again with first strike, which might be enough damage to get it safely through combat again. It seems pretty strong. Yeah, overall, I like the look of this. And if you happen to hit this with, say, one of the enchantment that lets it attack unblock or become unblockable if it attacks alone, then you're just getting in for 4 each turn. Or if you can get a couple of +1/+1 counters on this, it goes up even more. And I like the art callback, how he kind of has the glowing knuckles, like the brass knuckles cards that gave double strike, or the brass knuckle equipment that gave double strikes does. So it's kind of cool how they tied those 2 cards together, since they both have double strike. But overall, yeah, this seems like a very strong card. Endless Detour, for a green, a white, and a blue for an instant. It's a rare. The owner of target spell, non-land permanent, or card in a graveyard puts it on the top or bottom of their library. Okay, so this is counter magic basically, or removal, or graveyard hate. This is just a Swiss Army knife of answers that, yeah, absolutely, you would play this in a limited deck, and you would always have something to do with it that would be relevant. This is a very strong card. Commander players are going to love this card. If Bant becomes a thing in Standard, then yeah, or I guess Brokers is what it's called now, not Bant. Then yeah, this would be a great card to have in there. Again, it's just very flexible. It does a little bit of everything that you could possibly want to do with an answer. So yeah, this is a great card. Evelyn the Covetous. Oh boy, that's quite a mana cost. All right, so it's 2, a blue-black hybrid, a black, or a black-red hybrid. So it's a legendary creature, vampire rogue. It's a rare. It's a 2/5. It has flash. Whenever Evelyn the Covetous or another vampire enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of each player's library with a collection counter on it. Once each turn, you may play a card from exile with a collection counter on it. If it was exiled by an ability you controlled, and you may spend mana as though it were any color to cast it. Okay, so in terms of limited, yeah, it's a card that comes in and exiles stuff off your opponent's library, but it's a 2/5 flash. It's a great surprise blocker. It's essentially drawing you cards with these collection counter things. So overall, I would say that, yeah, in limited, this is great card advantage, a nice little surprise blocker. In terms of constructed, though, like EDH players who play vampires are gonna love this card. It just, you're drawing cards off of 3 different people's libraries. You can use all your mana to cast it, regardless of what color the spell is. And maybe you hit something big that now your opponent just doesn't have access to it anymore as well. So overall, this is a very cool card, and we'll definitely see some constructed EDH play. May even become a new vampire commander, and not just a card in the 99. But in terms of limited, yeah, this is pretty good. Not like a bomb, but I would say it's a very strong rare. Exotic Pets. 1, a white and a blue for an instant. Create 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens with this creature can't be blocked. Then for each kind of counter among creatures you control, put a counter of that kind on either of those tokens. Okay, so this is really interesting. So for 3 mana, the floor is for 3 mana you get 2 1/1s that can't be blocked. And then there's a little bit extra if you have any counters. So if you have a couple creatures with +1/+1 counters, or flying, or lifelinks, or vigilance counters, then the fish also get those abilities as well, divided amongst the 2 of them. Unfortunately, though, I don't think you're going to get enough different types of counters to really make this a real powerhouse card. I think most of the time you're going to get a 2/2 fish, a 1/1 fish, both can't be blocked. That's 3 unblockable damage a turn, though. So in a format that looks like this is going to be a very grindy format, so unblockable damage can really be a stalemate breaker. So I think this card might be okay. I don't think it's going to be strong. I think it's just going to be okay and kind of average. But I think in some decks it's going to be really, really strong, especially if you happen to pull Elspeth, the Planeswalker, who gives lots of different types of counters, and these just go up in value. This card goes up in value a lot. So in your average deck, it's going to be kind of just an okay average card. In some decks, it's going to be a little bit better than that, but I don't think it's ever going to be amazing. Velko, Spara Pact Weaver, 1, a green, a white, and a blue for a legendary bird demon. It's a mythic, and it's a 3/3. Got flying and trample. It enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast spells from the top of your library by removing a counter from a creature you control in addition to paying their other costs. Okay, so he lets you, just in and of himself, allows you to cast 1 spell from the top of your library since he has the 1 shield counter. Again, it depends, the ability for this card to really function and do what it's supposed to do completely depends on how many counters you have. So if you have a deck that has a ton of counters, yeah, this is going to give you tons of value. You're going to be able to play cards off the top of your library like nothing and just go to town. If you don't have any counters in your deck, however, this is a 4 mana 3/3 flying trample. That seems pretty good, even at that rate. It's like we've seen 3/3 flyers for 5 mana, and they've been playable in other formats. So this having trample makes it a little bit better, and it only being 4 mana makes it a little bit better. So I think regardless of how many counters you get, you'd be happy to play this in a limited deck. But its value just goes up and up and up for every counter that you add to your deck beyond Velko himself. So overall, yeah, this is pretty strong. Not necessarily a bomb, but in the right deck, it could be an absolute bomb. Fatal Grudge. A black and a red for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a non-land permanent. Each opponent chooses a permanent they control that shares a type with the sacrifice permanent and sacrifices it. Draw a card. Okay, so if you want to kill a creature, you sack a creature. If you want to kill a planeswalker, you have to sacrifice a planeswalker. So the problem with this is you have to share a permanent of the same type. So if your opponent has a planeswalker and you don't, you can't kill their planeswalker. If they have creatures and you don't have any creatures, you can't kill their creatures. This card is going to be pretty tricky, I think, to make work consistently. Like most of the time you're going to be going creatures because that's probably the most consistent route. But sacrificing one of your creatures to remove one that they get to choose, like, so you're sacrificing your worst creature for their worst creature. For 2 mana, a card in your hand, and this does draw another card to replace itself. So overall, it feels like you're trading a card for their worst creature and your worst creature. Like overall, it just feels like you're not really going up and gaining advantage by using this or really losing advantage. It's kind of not doing much. So I'd say this is kind of slightly below average. I'm not super impressed with it. Yeah, especially if they have like an artifact you want to get rid of, it means you have to have an artifact. You want to get rid of an enchantment, you have to have an enchantment. So I think this is going to be very tricky to make work in a lot of situations. So overall, I'd say it's slightly below average. Fleetfoot Dancer. 1, a red, a green, and a white for an elf druid. It's a 4/4, it's a rare, with trample, lifelink, and haste. Yeah, so this comes down 4 mana, 4/4, attacks right away, gains you 4 life, gets in for damage, tramples over little things so it can't just be chump blocked. Yeah, this is a very powerful rare for limited. The gaining 4 life is a huge life swing, especially if it gets through for all 4 damage. That's an 8-point life swing in your favor out of nowhere on turn 4. So absolutely, this is a powerful card. In terms of limited, sorry, not limited, constructed. Yeah, again, if Naya Elves becomes a thing in EDH, we could see this played in there. I don't know about constructed. Again, if some kind of Naya Tempo deck comes together in standard, then this could be in there. But until that happens, no, this wouldn't see any kind of play. Forge Boss, 2, a black and a red for a human warrior, 3/4. Whenever you sacrifice one or more other creatures, Forge Boss deals 2 damage to each opponent. This ability triggers only once each turn. Okay, so 4 mana 3/4 is below rate. And if you're a deck that has lots of blitz or other sacrifice outlets like the Body Dropper, then dealing the extra 2 damage, that's not too bad. That can add up over time. It only triggering once a turn is kind of unfortunate, but if you're using this with blitz, you're probably playing a blitz creature which is taking all your mana. So you're only going to sacrifice once a turn anyways. So in a blitz deck or a body dropper centric type deck, this is definitely a nice complementary card to have in there, and that would make this a very strong card. If you don't have a lot of ways of sacrificing, obviously this is just a 4 mana 3/4, and at that point it just doesn't do enough to justify playing. You have to be in a deck that's going to sacrifice a lot of creatures. Glamorous Outlaw. 3, a blue, a black, and a red for a vampire rogue, and so 4/5. And when it enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to each opponent, and you scry 2. So it's a nice ETB effect. It's 6 mana for a 4/5, but you also get that ETB effect, so it's not too bad. And also, this is the first creature we've seen out of this cycle here, where you can pay 2, exile Glamorous Outlaw from your hand, target land gains add blue, black, or red until Glamorous Outlaw is cast from exile. You may cast Glamorous Outlaw for as long as it remains exiled. So this card is, again, part of a cycle. There's one for each of the 5 color groupings, and they all have the same pay 2, exile them, and they fix your mana. This is the reason, these cards are the reason why this is a 3+ color format. These are fantastic ways to fix your mana. If you put this on, say, a forest or a plains, all of a sudden that land now taps for 4 colors of mana. If you put it on a mountain, island, or swamp, that land now taps for 3 colors of mana. So it really does a great job of fixing your mana. Gets a card out of your hand so it can't be discarded, or if it doesn't count against anything that cares about your hand size or anything. And then later down the road, when you have the 6 mana and you have nothing else really to do, you have a 4/5 comes down, and then it deals 2 damage, which isn't bad, and it lets you scry 2, helping you find more gas to keep going and keep the pressure on. I really, really like the design that they've gone here with the turning creatures into mana fixing until later in the game when you actually finally cast them, and then they're just creatures again. Beautiful, beautiful limited design. I love it. So this card, yeah, this is really great, really strong if you're in something that wants the Grixis colors. And yeah, just very happy to see this kind of design in the limited space. Well done, Wizards. Hostile Takeover. 2, a blue, a black, and a red for a sorcery. It's a rare. Up to 1 target creature has base power and toughness for 1/1 until end of turn. Up to 1 other target creature has base power and toughness for 4 until end of turn. Then hostile takeover deals 3 damage to each creature. Okay, so you turn their biggest creature into the 1/1, you turn your most important creature into the 4/4, and everything else pretty much dies, is kind of where this deck is where the spell is headed. Yeah, it's neat that you get to make sure one of your creatures, or if you have any creatures that have 4 toughness anyways, they'll also survive. So it's a kind of a situational asymmetrical board wipe in a way, because you have a bit of control how to manipulate things to make sure that the one creature you need to kill is dead and the one creature you really want to survive survives. So overall in limited, yeah, absolutely, this is a card you would play. It's very neat. It's an interesting design, and I think in EDH we'd see people playing this who are in Grixis, but I don't know about any kind of standard or historic constructed. I don't think it's going to do anything there. But in limited, yeah, you'd absolutely play this. Incandescent Aria, a red, a green, a white. For a sorcery, it's rare. Incandescent Aria deals 3 damage to each non-token creature. Yeah, if you are in these colors and you want to run a board wipe, this is going to do a fine job of that. Now, the problem with the Naya colors is you're going to probably be the one pushing with the board and having most of the creatures. So you've got to be kind of careful as to when you cast this. Now, it is non-token creatures, so your citizen tokens will survive just fine. If you have Fleetfoot Dancers, then they're going to survive this. So you have to be kind of picky about when you cast it, but it's definitely a good card to have to help you out in a situation where, say, maybe you get in with some of your smaller tokens, they get killed by bigger creatures, and this kind of finishes off the bigger creatures, get the job done, trading tokens basically for creatures. So overall, this is yet an interesting card. I definitely think you would play this in limited. In terms of constructed, maybe there are other board wipes that do this kind of effect that also hit token creatures, and in constructed, I think you're more likely to need to hit token creatures than to not hit them. So I don't think this is necessarily going to see a whole lot of play in constructed, maybe in standard where the other board wipes for 3 damage don't exist. So, but overall in limited, yeah, this is playable. Jetmir, Nexus of Revels. 1, a red, a green, a white. For a legendary cat demon mythic. It's a 5/4. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and have vigilance as long as you control 3 or more creatures. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample as long as you control 6 or more creatures. And creatures you control get +1/+0 and have double strike as long as you control 9 or more creatures. So in limited, if you have 6 or more creatures, you're probably already winning the game. So this is kind of a win more card. The 3 or more creatures giving vigilance and +1/+0, that's super relevant because all of a sudden your creatures can now attack and still be able to block. So that really helps slant things in your side. So in terms of limited, yeah, this is a 4 mana 5/4 with massive upside. This is an absolute bomb. You're more likely just worried about the first ability. The second and the third abilities are just absolute bonuses on top of that you're likely not going to get up to, because if you're at that point, you're already kind of winning the game anyways. But yeah, no, this is absolute bomb and limited, so you play this every time. And this may even become a pretty big commander in EDH as well. Like, this lets you play in a cat demon tribal deck, you know, for that standard combination of creature types. But yeah, pretty cool design here. Jetmir's Fixer, a green and a red for a cat warrior 2/2. For a red and a green, Jetmir's Fixer gets +1/+1 until end of turn. If mana from a treasure was spent to activate this ability, put a +1/+1 counter on Jetmir's Fixer instead. Alright, so this is a pretty cool treasure payoff, because you sacrifice the treasure tokens to permanently increase the power of this creature. And it only has to be 1 treasure per activation. So if you have 2 treasures and 2 normal mana, you can activate this twice, getting 2 +1/+1 counters. So yeah, this, if you're in a heavy treasures deck, this is a great payoff. It would be an absolute powerhouse in one of those kind of decks. And if your opponent can't find an answer to it, it's going to snowball out of control. If you're not in a treasure heavy deck, then it becomes a lot less powerful because the +1/+1 doesn't stay around. It's only until end of turn. You're dumping 2 mana in just to get 1 extra stat. So you're probably not going to be doing terribly much with this card. So I'd say you stick to this card when you're in a treasure heavy deck. Otherwise, it's probably a card you want to kind of avoid because it just doesn't do enough permanently. Ginny Faye Jetmir's Second. So it's a hybrid red-green, a green, and a hybrid green-white. For a legendary elf druid rare 3/3. If you would create one or more tokens, you may instead create that many 2/2 green cat creature tokens with haste, or that many 3/1 green dog creature tokens with vigilance. Wow, this is very, very interesting here. So yeah, in this format, we are seeing a lot of token creation cards, a lot of the citizen creation. And instead of those citizens that are 1/1s, you can get cats that are 2/2s or dogs that are 3/1s, whichever the board state helps you out the best with. So the cats have haste, so if you're able to get in for an attack right then and there, you do that. If you need to block a bit more, then you get the dogs. So nice and flexible. It helps you when you're ahead. It helps you when you're behind. Now, if you're not in a deck that does a lot of token creation, this is basically a 3-mana 3/3, which is not really great. So you wouldn't want to play that in that kind of deck. This is absolutely a card that you need to be making the tokens to justify playing. And so in that kind of deck in limited, you would absolutely play it. But if you're not making tokens, you don't play it in limited. In terms of EDH, this would be an interesting commander because there's lots of lots of white and green cards that can make tokens. And then you can go ahead and just start making cats and dogs instead of whatever other kind of tokens you may have been making. Say like if you cast March of the Multitudes for a whole bunch, instead of 1/1 tokens, all of a sudden you just got a whole bunch of cats and dogs, which could be quite the interesting board state. So yeah, there's definitely some interesting commander choices in this set here for sure. In terms of standard, I don't think standard tokens is a thing right now, and I don't foresee it becoming one, so we'll have to wait and see. But I don't think this will do much in standard. Lagrella the Magpie. Green, a white, and a blue for a legendary human soldier. It's a 2/3. When Lagrella the Magpie enters the battlefield, exile any number of other target creatures controlled by different players until Lagrella leaves the battlefield. When an exiled card enters the battlefield under your control this way, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Okay, so when it enters the battlefield, exile any number of other target creatures controlled by different players. So you can play this and exile one of your opponent's creatures. And then when an exiled creature enters the battlefield under your control this way. Oh, so when you get your creature back, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Okay. So yeah, if we look at this as just a 3-mana 2/3, it exiles one of your opponent's creatures until it leaves the battlefield. That's pretty good. That's not bad. That's Banishing Light, but it has a 2/3 body attached to it as well. Now, if you also choose to exile one of your creatures, when that creature comes back, it gets a little bit bigger as well. It's kind of a neat insurance policy to say, when you get rid of this creature, you're going to get your creature back, but I'm also going to get one of my creatures back, and it's going to be a little bit bigger. So that's kind of cool as well. I'd say this is overall a pretty strong card, and definitely something you would want to play in a broker's deck. I'd say it's above average. All right. We have Lord Xander the Collector. 4, a blue, a black, and a red. He's a legendary vampire, demon, noble, mythic 6/6. All right. When Lord Xander the Collector enters the battlefield, target opponent discards half the cards in their hand, rounded down. When Lord Xander attacks, defending player mills half their library, rounded down. When Lord Xander dies, target opponent sacrifices half the non-land permanents they control, rounded down. Okay, in limited, yeah, this is a bomb. It comes in, knocks their hand apart, it attacks, they lose half their library, which milling in limited is almost as good as exiling. And when it dies, they have to sacrifice half of their non-land permanents. Yeah, that's just an absolute beast of a card in limited, and yeah, you would play this if you're in the Maestro's color. Solid pack one, pick one for sure. Now, in terms of constructed, yeah, this looks like a very kind of mean commander to play with, like being able to knock people's hands and libraries around. You play this, you throw on the lightning greaves, you get in an attack, they lose half their library. Like, yeah, this is gonna really make some lives miserable in commander for sure. Maestro's Ascendancy. Blue, black, and red for an enchantment rare. Once during each of your turns, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard by sacrificing a creature in addition to casting its other costs. If a spell cast this way would be put in your graveyard, exile instead. Okay, in terms of limited, your instants and sorceries are likely not going to be better than the creature you'd have to sacrifice to cast them. So I don't see this being amazing in limited. Even if you have one or two instants and sorceries that are really strong, the odds of them lining up with this and lining up with the creature that you want to sacrifice are kind of low. So overall in limited, I'd say this is kind of bad. It's not going to really pay off very well, but this is going to be an absolute must-have in any Grixis EDH deck. Like there's tons of big spells in those colors that you would happily sacrifice a token or any kind of regular creature for to be able to play those spells again. Cyclonic Rift comes to mind, Plague Wind, numerous red spells that deal tons of damage. Yeah, so this is really meant for EDH. This one, limited, not so much. Maestro's Charm, blue, a black, and a red for an instant. Choose one. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. Put one of those cards into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Another mode, each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. Final mode, Maestro Charm deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Yeah, so this is removal, it's reach and life gain if need be, and it can also do some card selection and drawing there. So overall, this is a very strong charm, and I would say that is the case for limited as well as for EDH. It just lets you... Oh, it's each opponent too. So yeah, it hits all 3 of them in EDH, yeah. And then limited, the 5 damage is enough to kill almost every single creature in the format, except for, well, Xander, as we saw earlier. So overall, yeah, this is a very strong charm. And if you're in the Maestro's colors, you absolutely would play this. Play multiple copies even. Maestro's Diabolist. A blue, a black, and a red for a Vampire Warrior rare. It's a 1/4. Has Death Touch and Haste. Whenever Maestro's Diabolist attacks, if you don't control a devil token, create a tapped and attacking red devil token with when this creature dies, deals 1 damage to any target. Okay, so 3 mana 1/4 is bad. Haste makes it a little bit better, but still not great. And Death Touch, yeah, it makes it so they don't want to block. So you're happy to attack every turn with the 1/1. And if they block the 1/1, it's going to still ping them for 1 or ping another creature for 1. So overall, yeah, I'd say this is pretty solid. I wouldn't say it's terribly strong, not like amazing, like you absolutely always pick it, but it's a pretty strong card. And generating tokens, even if they don't stick around, and because they do the extra damage, is some pretty good value. But overall, I'd say, yeah, it's pretty strong. Pretty strong. Not a bomb, but this is still pretty strong. In terms of constructed, I don't know if this would go in a vampire deck. It doesn't seem to do enough vampire-ish things to justify a vampire in there. And for like a tempo Grixis deck, yeah, no, I don't think that's a thing either. So I don't think this will see terribly much constructed play. Masked Bandits, 3, a black, a red, and a green for a Raccoon Rogue 5/5. It has Vigilance and Menace, and it has the 2 mana exile, and then it gives a land, black, red, or green mana. So again, these cards are just great design. They help fix your mana, and a 5/5 with Vigilance and Menace is quite a combination of keywords and stats. This thing can attack and pretty much not be blocked in any negative way, and then if they attack back, you still have a 5/5 to block, which blocks almost everything in the format and does not die itself. So this card is absolutely massive and is very strong in limited for sure. And it's cool to see more raccoons. Meeting of the 5. It's 3, a white, a blue, a black, a red, and a green for a sorcery. It's a mythic. Exile the top 10 cards of your library. You may cast spells with exactly 3 colors from among them this turn. Add 2 white, 2 blue, 2 black, 2 red, 2 green. Spend this mana only to cast spells with exactly 3 colors. All right, in limited, you're very unlikely to have the right cards to make this actually do anything more than let you cast 1, maybe 2 spells. So this is really not going to be a limited card. But in Commander, oh, this is going to make its way into many different 5-colored Commander decks. Like Joda, or well, I guess Golos is banned now, so not Golos. the Dragon, like anything that's 5 colors is probably just going to run this card just because who knows what you're going to hit, and you might hit some crazy stuff and be able just to cast it right then and there, as long as your deck is running a good number of 3 color cards. But in terms of limited, absolutely not going to happen. Metropolis Angel, 2, a white and a blue for a 3/1 Angel Soldier, has flying. Whenever you attack with 1 or more creatures with counters on them, draw a card. Okay, so a 4-mana 3/1 flyer is pretty bad, but being able to draw cards when you attack with creatures with counter on them makes it a little bit better. You have to be careful though of this dying before you even get to attack, since it only has the 1 toughness. So you could play this while you still already have creatures on board with counters, and then kill it before combat, and then you just spent 4 mana on a 3/1 that did nothing. So this card's going to be tricky to make work well. I think you're really going to want to have... You're going to have... Yeah, because even if you have... Sorry, it's whenever you attack with 1 or more. So it doesn't matter how many creatures with a counter. So a single creature with a counter on it that can attack is fine to trigger this. But again, you got to be careful against who you're playing against. If they're running a lot of removal, be wary of that, so that way it doesn't get blown up before you even get to draw the card. But overall, I'd say this is... It seems a little dicey. It seems a little sketchy because that 1 toughness. All right, now we have Mr. Orpheo the Boulder. A 1, a black, a red, a green. For legendary Rhino Warrior, 2/4. Whenever you attack, double target creature's power until end of turn. Okay, so he swings as a 4/4, or another one of your creatures can swing and get doubled. Now, notably, Mr. Orpheo here himself does not need to attack for the doubling to happen. It's just whenever you declare attackers, someone gets doubled power. So that's pretty neat effect, especially if you have like the 5-mana... Or sorry, the 5/5 Vigilance Menace, the Masked Bandits. Then all of a sudden they're swinging for 10 with Menace. And yeah, so this card fits in well with the Riveteers, which is the color pair or color grouping it's in. So yeah, I would play this, even if it just comes down as a 4-mana 4/4 that attacks, and maybe sometimes you can get a counter on it to make it a swing for a little bit more even, maybe 6. Then yeah, it's still pretty good. Yeah, solid playable, not amazing, but definitely a solid playable. Nimble Larcenist, a white, a blue, and a black for a bird rogue. 2/1 with flying. When Nimble Larcenist enters battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an artifact, instant, or sorcery card from it and exile that card. Okay, so in limited, especially in this format, creatures matter more than artifacts, instants, or sorceries. So you're looking at their hand and you're choosing potentially a very irrelevant card, and you're paying 3 mana for a 2/1 flyer, which is pretty bad rate. So I would say if you're playing traditional, keep this guy in the sideboard, so that way if you're playing against an opponent that has a lot of instants and sorceries you're worried about, or an artifact you're worried about, you can bring it in, but you wouldn't want to mainboard it. In best of 1, arguably you could play 1 just in case, but I think a lot of the time you're going to find it's just a 3 mana 2/1 flyer, which really isn't doing terribly much. So I think in a lot of cases, this is just going to be a kind of a mediocre card. All right, we have Obnixalis the Adversary. A white, a black, sorry, not a white, a generic, a black, and a red. For legendary Nixalis Planeswalker, it's a mythic, and he's got 3 loyalty to start. He has Casualty X. The copy isn't legendary and has starting loyalty X. So when you cast this, you can sacrifice any creature, and X is the power of the creature you sacrificed. So if you sacrifice, say, a creature with 7 power, all of a sudden you have a copy of this that can ultimate immediately. Now, having a 7 power creature in limited, well, you're probably already winning the game, so this card really isn't necessary at that point. But yeah, so let's say you sacrifice a 2 or a 3 on average. So you get this 3 mana, 3 mana, 3 loyalty version, and then you get a copy that's a token that isn't legendary as well. Like, you're getting 2 planeswalkers for 1. That's absolutely insane. This is a massive bomb in limited. Now let's look what it actually does. Each opponent loses +1. Each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card. If you control a demon or a devil, you gain 2 life. -2. Create a 1/1 red devil creature token with, when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. And a -7. Target player draws 7 cards and loses 7 life. Okay, so you can play this, casualty it for 3, downtick the copy to uptick this guy to make them discard or lose 2 life, and then you'll have the devil to gain the 2 life. Like, it just plays so well with its own copy. That's really kind of cool interplay. And the effects, yeah, either they take 2 life, which isn't like amazing, but it's not bad, or they have to discard a card, so they're losing resources. And if you happen to have the demon or the devil, and if you're in red-black, there's a good chance you will have one of those, you can gain some life, which then just turns this into a 4-point life swing if they haven't discarded a card. And being a Planeswalker that comes down and can immediately make a token help defend himself as well is great. And the ultimate, yeah, if you can afford the 7 life, you just refill your hand. The 7 life may also just outright kill your opponent, so you have the option of it being a card that gets you way ahead, or a card that kills your opponent and wins you the game. In terms of constructed, yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of people who like to play hand-hate decks experiment with this for sure. I think this is probably going to see experimentation in as far back as Modern, maybe even in some kind of Legacy decks. Maybe not Legacy, maybe that's going a little too far, but definitely in a Rakdos Modern deck, we're going to see some play, and it might actually work out pretty well. Obscura Ascendancy, a white, a blue, and a black for an enchantment rare. Whenever you cast a spell, if its mana value is equal to 1 plus the number of soul counters on Obscura Ascendancy, put a soul counter on Obscura Ascendancy, then create a 2/2 white spirit creature token with flying. As long as there are 5 or more soul counters on Obscura Ascendancy, spirits you control get +3/+3. Okay, so you have to cast a 1-drop, you have to cast a 2-drop, you have to cast a 3-drop, 4, 5, and then all your spirits get bigger. It's going to be really, really, really hard and limited, and even in constructed, to make this card work. Like, the hoops you have to jump through to get the payoffs are really high. And limited, they're astronomical. This is not a limited card. Do not play this in limited. It is a trap, and you will fall into it every time. It will not work out well for you at all. In constructed, it's a little bit easier because you can build your deck around it a bit more. But even then, I think this card is going to be a bit of a stretch. And I don't think we're going to really see this played in very many things. Not even in Esper Spirit decks, just because it's so hard for this to actually get going. Obscura Charm, a white, a blue, and a black for an instant. Choose one of these 3 modes. Turn target multicolored permanent card with mana value 3 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Counter target instant or sorcery spell. Destroy target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less. Okay, so this is another very flexible card. It's a 3 mana resurrection spell, but has to hit a multicolored permanent, not just a creature, but a permanent, but also has to have a mana value of 3 or less. So it's kind of narrow on what you can get back, especially in limited. So that mode's maybe not the best, but being able to counter instant or sorcery spell that's going to destroy your biggest threat, that's pretty good value. And also being able to remove one of their earlier threats, this is pretty good value for this as well. So it's the second 2 modes for limited that are really going to matter. For the first mode, there could be some shenanigans that we could get up to in constructed with this ability. There's probably some kind of loop with other, like, I know Renegade Rallier is 3 mana and it brings another thing back, so bring it back to bring back something else. Like, there's gonna be some interesting things going on with this reanimation side, especially right now when there is an Esper Reanimator deck running around in standard, is that historic? That's an historic. There's the Priest of Fellrights. This gets the Priest of Fellrights back, so yeah, this is a pretty interesting card. I think we'll see a bit of historic constructed play, and definitely in limited, it's a playable as well. Obscura and Interceptor. 1, a white, a blue, and a black for a Cephalid Wizard rare 3/1 with flash and lifelink. When Obscura Interceptor enters battlefield, it connives. When it connives this way, return up to 1 target spell to its owner's hand. Okay, so it's 4 mana to counter a spell, sort of. And it gets to connive, so it gets to draw it and ditch, and potentially becomes a 4/2. It has lifelink, so it can be a surprise blocker again because it has flash. Like, this card is so flexible. It's going to be hard to find a situation where it's not good. And in the worst of cases, if you play it on their end step, it comes down as a 4/2, and on your turn you're able to attack successfully. It gains you 4 life, and they take 4 damage, or one of their creatures dies. Like this, in the floor case, this does some pretty good stuff. And it just goes up from there. If you're able to stop like a big spell they're trying to cast, say they have nothing on board, they're trying to play a 4-drop, you play this, you return the 4-drop to their hand, you get a 4/2, you get in for 4, they lose 4 life, you gain 4 life. That's an 8-point life swing. Like this is a bomb. This is one of the strongest obscure cards we've seen so far in this set here. So yeah, this is pretty neat. In terms of constructed, probably not likely to see much again, because right now Esper is going more the reanimator route in historic. In standard, I don't think it's really going to do much either. All right, we have Agnes, the Dragon's Lash. It's a 1 and a hybrid black-red, a red, and a hybrid red-green. For a legendary Fioshano warrior, a rare, it's a 3/3 with haste. Whenever a creature you control with haste attacks, create a tapped treasure token. Okay, so this is another easy way to generate treasures. I know Jun's Sacrifice is a thing in historic, so this would be a pretty nice piece for that, because again, it just makes treasures that they can easily sacrifice, and they start doing pinging tricks. So yeah, so for a while there, Golgari Sacrifice kind of took over from Jun's Sacrifice, so this might actually kind of bring Jun's Sacrifice back into the historic meta. Not that I'm sure I'm too thrilled about that. That's a tough matchup for me. Anyways, in terms of limited though, a 4 mana 3/3 with haste that gives you treasures. Yeah, even if you don't have treasure payoffs, that's pretty good. It helps you ramp up in future turns. 3/3 haste is pretty decent stats. And then again, if you have treasure payoffs, just goes up in value from there. So overall, I would say in limited, yeah, it's a pretty strong card. Not an absolute bomb, but pretty strong still. All right, Park Heights Pegasus. A green and a white for a Pegasus. It's a rare. It's a 2/1 with flying and trample. Whenever Park Heights Pegasus deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. If you had 2 or more creatures enter the battlefield the turn under your control. Let me read that again. Whenever Park Heights Pegasus deals combat damage to a player, draw a card if you had 2 or more creatures enter the battlefield under your control this turn. Okay, so in limited, having 2 creatures enter under your control this turn is going to be difficult to consistently enable that. So a lot of the time, this is just going to be a 2 mana 2/1 flying trample, which trample with 2 power isn't much to trample over. So I would say in terms of limited, if you're desperate for a flyer, then you could play this. Or if you're on a deck that has a lot of cards that generate multiple tokens, then you can reliably trigger the card draw ability. But these are some pretty big hoops to jump through to make this card really work. So I don't think it's terribly great in limited. It's okay because again, it's a flyer, and flyers are usually at least okay, but it's not amazing. And I don't think any kind of constructed play is going to be seen for this. All right, Quasar, Augur of Agnes. A 1, a white, a blue, and a black for a legendary Cephalid Advisor. It's a 3/4. Whenever you draw a card, target opponent loses a life and you gain a life. Okay, so that's going to happen every turn when you draw your card for your turn. And then if you have any extra card draw, it's going to keep happening. So yeah, 4 mana 3/4 isn't a great rate, but that upside, assuming you're able to make sure this lives a turn, you're getting pretty good upside. Like it's slowly draining your opponent. It's 2-point life swing. And if you can play this and immediately draw cards from something you have on the board, if you can follow up with another spell that draws you more cards, then you get that value just right away. So overall, this is a pretty cool card. And in terms of constructed, if there is a really heavy Esper control deck that just wants to sit there, draw the game out, and draw cards, this is a pretty good piece for it, because then you're slowly draining your opponent as another win con, and you're also gaining life to keep yourself in the game. So this potentially could see play in an Esper control deck if that has enough pieces to work out in this current meta. But in terms of limited, I'd say, yeah, this is a pretty strong card. Raffine, Scheming Seer. A white, a blue, and a black for a legendary Sphinx Demon Mythic. A 1/4 with flying and ward 1. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature connives X, where X is the number of attacking creatures. So you draw X cards, discard X cards, and put a +1/+1 counter for each non-land discard this way. Wow. Yeah, so in terms of limited, like a 3-mana 1/4 flyer with ward 1, that's pretty good. And then the connives triggers is just, that's absolutely insane. Like even if you attack with just one creature, every time you attack it connives. So this guy could just keep getting bigger, or one of your other creatures could keep getting bigger. Like, yeah, this is an absolute bomb. Like this is gonna just slowly take over the game. It's hard to remove. They have to spend an extra mana, which isn't a ton to be fair, but it's enough to slow them down for at least a turn and to make the chances of untapping with this guy up, this guy still alive, really high. So I would say, yeah, an limited absolute bomb. This could be an interesting commander. You could set up some kind of maybe madness deck where you want to draw lots of cards and discard them and do a bunch of crazy things. Or if you're trying to do reanimation things, you might want to draw cards and discard them to reanimate them, which is becoming Esper's thing. So yeah, this definitely could see some play in Constructed as well. Brackish Revelers, 2 a black, or sorry, not a black, 2 a red, a green, and a white for an elf druid rogue. It's a 5/3, and when it enters the battlefield, it creates a 1/1 green and white citizen token, and it can fix your mana for a red, green, or white for 2 mana. All right, so yeah, again, another one of the fix your manas. It becomes a creature later on. It brings 6/4 worth of stats for 5 mana, which is pretty good when it's over 2 bodies. And the fact that you've already fixed your mana earlier in the game, it can help you cast it itself. So yeah, overall, I would say this is a very strong card. Rigo, Streetwise Mentor, a hybrid green-white, a white, or a hybrid white-blue. Legendary cat citizen rare, 2/2. Rigo, Streetwise Mentor enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. Whenever you attack a player or planeswalker with 1 or more creatures with power 1 or less, draw a card. Okay, so if you're in a deck that's making a lot of citizen tokens, you're going to be able to consistently trigger this ability and turn those tokens into card draw. Even if you have to attack, even knowing you're going to lose it to sacrifice it, it's worth it to draw a card because you're trading just a little token for an actual card. So that's great. So in terms of limited, yeah, if you're in a deck that's going to make a lot of those tokens, then absolutely this guy would be pretty good. If you can't make those tokens reliably, or you don't have a lot of other 1-power creatures, then this is just a 3-mana 2/2 with a shield counter. That's just bad. You're not going to want to play that. In terms of commander, yeah, this seems like it would be a kind of a tricky card to make into a good commander, because the upside of attacking and drawing a card isn't huge. And also, if you're on some kind of tribal deck or anything, then you're going to have a lot of lord effects or just creature type buffs and whatnot, so the power 1's going to be really tricky. So in Commander, I think this is going to be really tricky to make work as a great one. And in terms of Constructed, I don't think we'll see this Standard or Historic or Modern or anything. I don't think this will see any play. Riveteer's Ascendancy, a black, a red, and a green for an enchantment rare. Whenever you sacrifice a creature, you may return target creature card with lesser mana value from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Do this only once each turn. Okay, so yeah, like in limited, being able to return a creature to the battlefield when you have to sacrifice another one, even if you can only do that once a turn, that's absolutely great. You put down Blitz, a Blitz creature, you sacrifice it, you get something else, you draw the card off Blitz. Like this is just a value train, especially if you can combine it with the Body Launderer, who also, when he dies, brings back something. So if you sacrifice him, you get 2 things back. Yeah, this is an absolute value bomb in limited. And in Constructed, it seems like the value is not going to be enough to really do things. In Constructed, people have lots of answers to graveyard, so they can just eat your graveyard and then you don't get anything. So I think this is really just going to see a lot of play in limited, but outside of that, not so much. Riveteer's Charm, a black, a red, and a green for an instant. Target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker they control with the highest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards, and exile target player's graveyard. Yeah, so they for 3 mana, they sacrifice their biggest threat on the board, basically. This is absolutely great. You would play this for sure in any deck that's running these colors in limited. And being able to draw 3 cards and be able to play them, that's just great if you're in a board stall and the sacrificing isn't really going to matter, or if they have nothing and you have nothing, then this is just drawing you 3 cards to get you back in the game. And if they happen to have the previous Ascendancy we just saw, exiling their graveyard could be quite relevant. So overall, yeah, this is a very strong card and you would absolutely play it. Outside of limited, yeah, people might play this in Commander because, you know, making your opponent sacrifice probably their commander seems like a pretty strong thing to do. Rocco, Cabaret Caterer. It's X, a red, a green, and a white for a legendary elf druid 3/1. When Rocco Cabaret Caterer enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you may search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. Yeah, so a 3/1 for 3 who then tutors and puts onto the battlefield a creature. This is great. This is absolutely great. You're going to go and get whatever the best creature for that mana value you have left in your library, and you're getting 2 bodies for the cost of 1. Like, yeah, this is absolutely great and limited. You would play multiple copies, even though it's a legendary, because it would most likely die fairly shortly after playing it, since it is just a 3/1. So you can just swing away, and then if you have a second copy, boom, you get 2 more bodies again. So absolutely great. This could see play in Commander as a commander, just because your commander is basically, hey, play your commander and then tutor for another creature out of your deck. Like, that seems really, really good. This seems like a very strong commander. And yeah, I'm looking forward to brewing with that one. Scheming Fence, a white and a blue for a human citizen rare 2/3. As Scheming Fence enters the battlefield, you may choose a non-land permanent. Activated abilities of the chosen permanent can't be activated. Scheming Fence has all activated abilities of the chosen permanent except for loyalty abilities. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate those abilities. Okay, so this is a very interesting card that will not be very much of use in limited whatsoever. If you're playing traditional, you can keep it in the sideboard, and if they happen to have an activated ability you care enough about, you can bring it in. But for the most part, this is going to be a 2 mana 2/3, and that's why he's a 2 mana 2/3, is his ability in limited basically just doesn't exist. So in limited, seems kind of bad. In terms of constructed, though, this is a nice card that can help shut down various different things, like, let's say Urza's Saga comes to mind in Modern. It's another human, so it goes in the humans deck in Modern as well. So I think we're going to see a fair bit of play in Modern, actually. Just a great sideboard piece for them, and potentially even main boardable if the meta has enough activated abilities people care about. And with how prevalent Urza Saga is, that may be the case. Security Rocks, a 2 and a red and a green for Rhino Warrior, the 5/4. You may pay red and a green rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Spend only mana produced by treasure to cast it this way. Wow, okay, so this is a huge treasure payoff. So if by turn 2 you can get 2 treasures, you can have a 5/4 on the board for 2 mana. Yeah, so in a treasure deck, this is absolutely great. Outside of a treasure deck, this is absolute trash. So clearly it's a you're in the deck or you're not kind of card. And yeah, it's a good thing to use your treasures on. Nice big body for 2 mana. Shattered Seraph, 4, a white, a blue, and a black for an Angel Rogue 4/4 as flying. And when Shattered Seraph enters the battlefield, gain 3 life. And it has the 2 mana land fixing ability for white, blue, and a black. So yeah, 4 mana, 4/4. It is 7 mana, which is a lot. But since it's just sitting on a land until you are at the point where you have that mana, that's not too bad. So 4 mana flying is great, and gaining 3 life can definitely be very helpful in a very grindy format. It buys you more time to kind of stabilize and catch up now that you have a bigger body on the board. So yeah, this is absolutely very strong. Snooping Newsy for a blue and a black. It's a human rogue 2/2. When Snooping Newsy enters the battlefield, mill 2 cards. As long as there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, Snooping Newsy gets +1/+1 and has lifelink. So a 2 mana 3/3 with lifelink, if you have the mana values in your graveyard, that's pretty good value. lifelink is very relevant, and a 3/3 is a decent sized body in this format. It coming in and milling for 2, yeah, that just helps fuel its own ability. You might have some cards that you want in your graveyard that have abilities. Not too many of those are unlimited. So overall, I'd say this card's kind of okay. I think a lot of the time, though, you're going to find it's just a 2-mana 2/2 that mills you for 2, and then it didn't really do anything beyond that. So yeah, it's kind of average, kind of mediocre. But if you can consistently get the 5 or more mana values, then it's not too bad. Soul of Emancipation, 4 and a green, white, and a blue for an avatar rare. It's a 5/7. When Soul of Emancipation enters the battlefield, destroy up to 3 other target non-land permanents. For each of those permanents, its controller creates a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying. Okay, so very reminiscent of Terastodon, where it comes in, and except in this case it's non-lands, Terastodon's non-creatures. It's wide open removal. You can destroy 3 other creatures, and then they get more creatures in return. But if you're blowing up things that are worse than a 3/3 angel, you're coming out ahead. And if they have stuff that's better than a 3 or worse than a 3/3 angel, you just don't blow those up. And it is up to 3, so you don't have to do the full 3 as well. You can also use it to destroy 3 of your own citizen tokens, and all of a sudden they become angels. Now, one thing to note is this itself does not have flying, which, based on the artwork and what it does, kind of feels like it should, but I guess that would be a bit pushed if it did. 7 mana in this format, it's not too hard to get to, especially with all the treasures, and it is a slower format. So overall, in limited, this is absolutely a bomb. In terms of constructed, yeah, Commander, this is a good piece of removal, nice big body. It's a lot of mana, but Commander players can generate a lot of mana. And if you're blowing up worse things than 3/3 angels, which is what you probably are doing in Commander, then it's definitely well worth it. So overall, it's pretty cool. Oh, wrong way. All right, we have Spar's Adjudicators. 2, a green, a white, and a blue for a cat citizen, 4/4. And when they enter the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls can't attack or block until your next turn, and it fixes your mana for green, white, or blue. Yeah, again, 5 mana, 4/4 is okay. Then it disables a creature until your next turn. So that creature now can't block, and it can't attack you back. So this seems pretty strong, actually. And again, I just really like the design of this mana fixing. It's really cool to see creatures help solve mana fixing in limited and then still be usable as creatures down the road. So overall, yeah, this is a solid card. And it's also a citizen for when that matters. Stimulus Package. 2, a red, and a green for an enchantment. When Stimulus Package enters the battlefield, create 2 treasure tokens. You can sack a treasure to make a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. Okay, so if you're in a Naya's Treasures deck, here's a great payoff. Turning treasures into 1/1 tokens is very relevant, especially if you can sit there and generate a ton of tokens, or if you happen to get that 2 mana 2/2 guy who makes treasure tokens and then hurts you if you have them. This is an easy way just to turn those into creatures and get even more value, because a 1/1 is definitely a lot more value than a treasure token is. But if you're not in a deck that makes a lot of treasures, this card's trash. Don't play it. This is only for treasure token decks. Syndicate Infiltrator. 2, a blue, and a black for a vampire wizard. The 3/3 flyer. As long as there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, this card gets +2/+2. Okay, so it's a 4 mana 3/3 flyer. That right there is playable. And then it has an upside if you have 5 or more different mana values in your graveyard, becoming a 5/5 flyer, which just makes this even better. So yeah, absolutely. This card is great in limited. Absolutely, you want to play it every time you see it, and you'd want to play multiple copies of this. Tainted Indulgence, a blue and a black for an instant. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card unless there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard. So that's really cool. It helps set up the 5 or more mana values ability. So you draw the 2, and it's like, well, I haven't got there yet, so now you're putting one of those in your graveyard. You can strategically choose to get closer to having the 5 different cards. And yeah, 2 mana to draw 2 cards, that's pretty decent, especially at instant speed. So yeah, this, if you're on the 5 or more mana values in the graveyard tech, or even if you're just in a deck that's blue-black and you don't really care about what's in your graveyard, this is still a playable, pretty good card. Toulouse Clever Conductor. Hybrid white-blue, blue, hybrid, blue, black. Legendary, human, rogue, rare, 3/1. When Toulouse enters the battlefield, it connives. Whenever you discard one or more cards, exile them from your graveyard. When Toulouse dies, put the cards exiled with it into their owner's hand. Wow, okay, so this turns all your connive triggers into card draw in the future. And any other kind of discard outlets, but most of the discard in this format is definitely from connive, yeah. This is crazy. Even if you just get the one connive trigger off itself, you're getting another card later down the road to replace this once it dies. Plus, you just drew and kind of fixed your hand a bit, and it may be a 4/2. Yeah, this is an absolute bomb in limited. Like, it's helping you draw so much card advantage. And if you have any other triggers of connives, especially anything that is like a recurring connive trigger, like a body launderer comes to mind, this just goes way up in value, for sure. In terms of Commander, yeah, this is a great way to get a whole bunch of value in Commander. Like, you get this out as you play this as your Commander, play lots of cards that draw and discard, and then eventually you have a way of sacrificing your Commander because your opponents aren't going to want to kill it, since you would get a whole bunch of cards. So you would want to sacrifice her, get all the cards, bring her back, keep going to town, and then, yeah, it's just a great value. Unleash the Inferno. 1, a black, a red, and a green for an instant rare. Unleash the Inferno deals 7 damage to target creature or planeswalker. When it deals excess damage this way, destroy target artifact or enchantment opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to the amount of excess damage. Wow, so that's kind of cool to see damage and enchantment and artifact removal all in one card. So 4 mana deals 7 to any creature. So basically 4 mana just remove any creature or planeswalker on the board in limited. That right there, absolutely great and playable. The rest of it, where the excess damage becomes artifact or enchantment removal based on their mana values, that's just gravy. You're already playing this card as it is, so if you happen to get that pay off as well, then awesome, even more value. In terms of constructed, yeah, this seems like something you would definitely want to be running in Commander, just because, you shoot a token, be able to get something with like 6 CMC off the board pretty easily. That'd be pretty cool. Void Render. White, blue, black, instant, rare. This spell can't be countered. Destroy target non-land permanent. Yeah, no, Esper Control is looking like it might be a real thing in Standard. With a card like this, just wide open removal, can't be stopped. In terms of limited, 3 mana, wide open removal. Can't be countered is less relevant because there's not a whole lot of counter spells, but it might matter sometimes. But yeah, absolutely, this is a great card in limited, and this is a card that will definitely see some kind of constructed play. Definitely in EDH as well. We may even see this go back to Modern if Esper becomes a control deck in Modern ever. Zeatora the Incinerator. 3, a black, a red, a green for a legendary demon dragon, mythic, 6/6, flying. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, Zeatora the Incinerator deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target, and you create 3 treasure tokens. Wow, okay, well, 6 mana, 6/6 flyer, absolute bomb and limited right then and there. And then the ability to be able to sacrifice other creatures to deal their power to other targets, and then make a bunch of treasures, which then could be crazy treasure payoffs, could turn into other citizens. You could use them to +1/+1 that one creature with the plus abilities. Like there's a lot of payoffs for red, green, and treasures. And this just helps fuel that. This is an absolute crazy card for limited. You can sacrifice your biggest creature and have it deal damage right to your opponent's face. Like this is just, it does a lot of different things. It's very flexible, helps ramp you, and it's just a huge threat that must be removed as soon as you play it. Almost like it's not even that you have to untap with it. Getting to your end step with it may be enough for this to just take over the game. Absolute bomb. In terms of playing this in constructed, Standard hasn't never really been a place for big cards like this, so I don't think so. Commander, there are lots of dragon decks, so they probably would play this. Playing this as your commander though, I don't know if the ability does enough to be that interesting of a commander, so we'll have to wait and see, but it's definitely an absolute bomb in limited. Zeatora's Envoy. 1, a black, a red, and a green for a Vaishana Warrior rare, 5/4 trample. Whenever Zeatora's Envoy deals combat damage to a player, look at the top card of your library. You may play a land from the top of your library or cast a spell with mana value less than or equal to the damage dealt from the top of your library without paying its mana cost. If you don't, put the card into your hand. And it blitzes for 2, a black, a red, and a green. Okay. So 4 mana, 5/4 trample, that alone is pretty good and playable. You can blitz it for 5 mana, 5/4 with trample. That has haste, and then it dies and draws you a card. Yeah, that's playable. So if you ignore the big block of text on this card, it's absolutely still playable. Now, when you get in and you actually deal damage to a player, you can either play a land from your library, or if you hit a spell that is mana value equal to or less than the damage you dealt, you get to play that spell for free. And if you can't do that, so if you didn't hit a land, or if you hit a spell that's just more mana than damage you dealt, you get to draw a card. Like, this is an absolute bomb. Like, this is just going to come down, going to get in for some damage, and it's either going to get you a free spell, an extra land, or just draw you a card. And if it's dealing damage to a player, it's probably sticking around to some point, some degree. So the next turn it's going to attack and do it again. And if you blitzed it, you're going to draw a card again. So it's going to get you 2 cards. Like, yeah, this card is really, really strong. In terms of constructed, it doesn't seem like the kind of thing that's probably really going to see me play, because as soon as it gets played, it'll just get killed. And then you get no value off it. So definitely a bomb in limited, not so much for constructed. And there we go. We have completed the multicolor cards, and oh boy, there was a lot of them. The flavor of this set definitely comes through in the multicolor cards. And yeah, this is actually the first limited format I've ever played in that is so solidly 3+ color format. So I'm really looking forward to drafting this one, and probably pushing to try some crazy 5-color shenanigans more than once. So yeah, hey, it's been great looking through all these cards. Again, thank you all for watching if you've made it this far. I know this is a pretty long review to get through, and if you've seen all my other parts, again, thank you so much. Very much appreciated for a starting up creator like myself. Again, like the video, subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you thought in the comments, most importantly at all. Like, I like to have conversations with you guys and get your feedback on things I misevaluated, or what you're thinking of these cards, what you're excited to try and play with, you know. Yeah, it's been quite a long set of reviews for these videos. The first time I've ever done a review like this. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun reading these cards, and I'm very much looking forward to drafting some Streets of New Capenna. And yeah, so looks like 4 more days until we get to try that out. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.